All right, welcome back to the 62nd episode of the podcast, The Unknown. My name, Michael Volpe, and I am in Chicago, Illinois. That is in Cook County, Illinois. I write at michaelvolpe.substack.com. Get a subscription, either paid or free, available. My broadcast partner, Richard Luthmann, Luthmann. Then he writes at luthmann.substack.com. You're somewhere around Fort Myers, Florida. That's in Lee County, which is named after Robert E. Lee, the Confederate general. All right, so we got a lot to talk about, and this will be broadcast on Rumble and some other places, but not on YouTube, and we'll get to why I can't. Well, you could put it on YouTube, but I can't. We'll get to that in a minute. But before we get to that, you were giddy because Trump made it from one part of the world to the other, and he is currently in Asia, and you think this is a really big deal. You obviously have very low expectations. He was able to get on a plane, land, fly all the way to Asia and land. And I didn't see anything else happen besides the prime minister, who's a woman, the leader of Japan. I think they call her the prime minister. She gave him some gifts. They watched the World Series. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani. I don't think he's as good as Babe Ruth, but he is very unique. He's Japanese. This is a story from this morning. I like this. He says we made our deal, pretty much finalized it with South Korea. That's the trade deal. Pretty much finalized it. That's not exactly a finalization, but pretty much finalized the deal. But you think this is of epic proportions, and they'll talk about this 300,000 years from now. Why?
Trump is the deal maker president. And what he's done this entire time, what you might have missed, Michael, in the nuance, is he's been making deals with every country in Asia. So remember, we had the across-the-board tariffs, which are going to be upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States, it's my prediction, because you can't do national security without foreign policy, and a tariff is a tool of both. But he goes, and he's now made side deals with all these different countries, with Cambodia, with Thailand, with the Philippines, everything else. And the big thing is, they're avoiding the tariff. It's because of the tariffs. They're avoiding the big tariff by making the side deals. Secondarily, the great dragon is China. And what they do in a lot of these countries, they repackage Chinese goods and send them from the other countries to avoid, different trade sanction and everything else. Well, they strengthen that in a lot of these deals as well. But the big jewel in the crown to this point has been Japan. And we went to Japan. A huge $10 billion investment from Toyota was announced. We have probably the best relationship right now with Japan that we've had in a long time. I know Shinzo Abe was a good friend of Trump. He even said it was a good friend of his in the political world, and he was missed. But Tsunai Takaichi, who is the prime minister, as you said, of Japan, she's basically the political heir to Shinzo Abe. And this is a continuation of Trump making one of our great allies, Japan, feel welcome and know that they have support against China. And I think that's one of the more important things that happened. It was a bit of, we're doing economics and we're doing an economic deal, and that's what we're going to do. But we're here. The U.S. is not going to abandon Japan. We're firmly planted. We saw the U.S. The speech that he gave from the U.S. warship, from the aircraft carrier, parked in Japan, and that can't be sitting well in Beijing right now. So they understand that this is a little bit of saber rattling, both economically and militarily, and I think it's a great thing.
We'll see how they deal with China. I give them a C+ on trade. I don't think they've made a trade deal with the EU. They have made one with England. Obviously, China is the key. They haven't made one with them yet. I would move it up to a B- if this pretty much goes away and there's an actual deal. That said, as far as tariffs are concerned, because we haven't talked about this in a while, Trump got his feelings hurt by Ontario doing a commercial quoting Reagan accurately, maybe somewhat out of context, but talking down on tariffs. Now, Reagan had some tariffs; they were targeted, so that may have been what ticked Trump off. But I, it, it's not a secret that Trump's tariff policy is a complete rejection of decades of conservative thinking. That doesn't mean he's wrong. He may be right, but he shouldn't be surprised if they go into the vault and find Reagan. It's certainly not good policy to make tariff policy dictated based on whether or not someone made a commercial you like. While you have mentioned all of the good trade deals with our two main trading partners, Mexico and Canada, what we're seeing is an increase in tariffs. So that's why I'm at a C plus. But we'll see how it progresses. I don't know why he's picked a fight with Canada. Canada is not our problem. You can try to make sure they're not taking advantage of us, but he's treating Canada a lot worse than he's treating Russia right now, and that's not good foreign policy.
Well, I think that the whole trade war could be settled if you're talking about taking away problems. Maybe Justin Trudeau could take away Katy Perry and make Katy Perry Canada's problem. Right. That might go a long way to solve the trade war that we're having.
Somebody's jealous. Somebody's jealous that Justin Trudeau could hook up with Katy Perry, and you can't. I understand, but I don't know why he's picking a fight with Canada. I don't think Canada's done anything that's so over the top that he needs to be sticking all these tariffs on them. They and Mexico are the key trading partners. So right now he's antagonizing our two key trading partners. But you're right, he is making a lot of deals as well. This is a work in progress. It takes time to get everyone done. If he pulls it off, our trade philosophy will be completely revolutionized. I'll say that. Okay, now we got to get to my hometown of Chicago, Illinois. First of all, we're going to have a fun new ongoing segment, I guess, not segment, but part of our broadcast. We're going to talk a little bit about the district judges because they don't get enough love on their background. This is U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis. You looked her up. Who appointed her? What president appointed her?
Who appointed her, Mike?
I think that was President Obama. Now, was she born in the U.S.?
Barack Hussein Obama, right?
Right. Was she born in the U.S.?
Isn't she an immigrant judge?
I think she was born in Canada. You're holding out hope that if she pisses off Trump enough, he'll figure out a way to revoke her citizenship and send her packing. Now, this guy right here, he heads the Chicago operation for ICE, Greg Bovino. Sarah Ellis, is not happy with him because they keep throwing out tear gas. So she's ordered them not to throw tear gas. I don't understand. U.S. District Judge can dictate policy on how ICE conducts its operations. Does that make sense?
It's a terrible separation of powers issue. It's you can't tell the executive branch how to do things, like specific, right. like operational security. That's protection of officers' lives and everything else. Judges isn't an expert in that. They're not even capable of making that determination. It's right. Kind of like Boasberg. It's kind of Boasberg, the D.C. judge that was ordering the planes to turn around, military planes.
You remember
it's something that judges can't do, right. And it's a little bit laughable when they do it,
Okay. Now, she was responding to a series of incidents where ICE was throwing out tear gas. So she was responding to something that's very problematic because he shouldn't be. But I think they're all drunk on power. I think the ICE people think that they can do whatever they feel like doing, that there's no rules as far as grabbing people. But I think this judge thinks that she is the executive branch. That said, the craziest part right here, look at this. Motion to ban tear gas. How many of these, when you were a lawyer, how many times did you write a motion to ban tear gas?
Well, I asked her some crazy stuff. I asked to stab people and whatnot. I might still be asking to stab people very soon. But right.
All
How
right.
can you say the only way you can get a motion like that as a judge? Think about this:
Right.
is if there's
Motion.
no possible use of
All
tear
right. But
gas
if
ever
you
in the
think that's
executive branch.
bad, if you think that's bad, this is Judge Ellis, has ordered this guy to show up in court at about 6 p.m. every day, every business day, not over the weekend, to basically brief her on what they did each day until they hold the next hearing, which I think is November 4th. So, and this order came down on Monday. So I think he's been there Monday, probably yesterday. He'll be there today, tomorrow, Monday, and then they're back in court on Tuesday. Um, she's definitely drunk on power. ICE is going a little crazy, but she's drunk on power as well. Any thoughts you have?
Gotta suck because you should be making double time on that stuff, maybe even triple time. Going to see judges like
I
that at
don't
hours
know.
the
Are
government shut
we are
down.
we are we paying for that? That's a good point. Are
We're
we?
paying. We're paying for the double time.
All right.
It would start time and a half and double time, and sometimes triple time if you get over a number of hours. And this judge is adding hours to this guy's week, so he's got to be happy, but he's got to be sad. He's not seeing it yet
All
because
right.
the
And
government shut down.
I'm gonna introduce when we talk about the things happening in Chicago with ICE. I'm gonna try to take a photo of a sign related to ICE and have you talk about it that I found in Chicago. This is at a playground that I'm at all the time. English and Spanish. We'll read the English version. Mutual aid, training, legal support, report ICE sightings. And there's your phone number. I don't know how to use these things, but I'm sure this leads somewhere. Uh, report ICE sightings. Is that kosher? Is that allowed? Or how does all that work? It seems like it's the same thing as when you're driving in a car and a guy like blinks twice with his lights to let you know there's a cop ahead. Is that basically the same thing? Can you report ICE?
Similar to what Letitia James is doing in New York, where they have this little app where they go and report ICE sightings. It is all funded by the left. If you trace it back far enough, that little box there, the QR code goes back to George Soros. And what it is they're trying to frustrate the ability to
You think that
execute
this will
the
lead to a
federal immigration
website
laws.
that's possible. The reason I'm going to do it is because there's a lot of these kind of anti-ICE signs, not specifically like legal support, but these anti-ICE signs. I want to give people an idea of what we are seeing in Chicago. I'll tell you, I think ICE polls at 10%, if that, in the city of Chicago. So I don't know if that matters to you, but it's there. The citizens are extremely unhappy, and I wanted to get one more thing up. So this is, I think the latest. This is my favorite media for ICE stuff. Block Club Chicago. They're left, but I think they're liberal. Um, they're not far left, and basically the theme that's coming out of the media in Chicago is that ICE is scaring kids because they are dropping tear gas into residential areas. They are picking people up in schools. Sometimes they're picking up students in schools who they say are illegal. They are grabbing them, throwing them into a van, throwing them into an SUV, throwing them into a hatchback, and then that person isn't seen again. They grabbed a guy whose 16-year-old daughter is going through chemo, I think, and I don't know how much time she has to live. She hopefully will make it. He's been here a while. That's a story. That's a cause celeb. Uh, we the pro-ICE people, some all may be illegal. It's hard to know because they're grabbing them, and then you don't know anything about them. So are they illegal? I don't know. They are grabbing people off the street. This is definitely not a predominantly criminal, illegal alien, meaning they've committed other crimes besides being here illegally. This is Trump is fixated, and the latest numbers that came out is he has deported, I think, approximately 500,000 people so far this year. That's huge. But they are so, numbers are important. It's a way to measure. It's the best way to measure. But if all you're doing is trying to reach a number, and it doesn't matter how you get there, I think you lose sight of the goal. And all of these guys are grabbing anyone they can, anywhere they can. And the people in Chicago just absolutely can't stand it. And one other thing, they are going into a lot of these poor neighborhoods, and the businesses are being wrecked by it because people refuse to leave their homes. So if you wreck businesses in poor neighborhoods, you're asking for a lot of crime, which is ironic because you've got someone who claims they're the law and order president. But you're going to create a lot of crime in some of these neighborhoods on the west side, on the south side, where you are running a lot of operations because they're not going to go to the restaurants anymore. Any extra thoughts on your end?
Well, you were up in Evanston, right?
I was
I
in
saw your photo.
Evanston. Had
Beautiful
no
at Evanston.
right.
It looked beautiful up there.
It's gorgeous in Evanston. I saw no anti-ice signs. They haven't been to Evanston. I don't know how many illegal aliens are in Evanston. Evanston is directly north of the northern part of Chicago, right on Lake Michigan. Uh, Pretty well-to-do suburb. Where
What,
Northwestern,
Northwestern University up there, right?
right, where Northwestern is at. No anti-ice. No one is complaining about ice. No signs. No protests. None of that. That's correct. In Evanston, there are no problems. So that is correct. They're not in every single neighborhood. You may, you're gonna that's gonna create a kind of like racial and like money issue, because what the people who are targeted will say is, you're not in Evanston because that's a lot of white folks. There's a lot of wealthy folks. You're not going there. You're coming to us. You're profiling us. That's what I think they're going to say in the poor neighborhoods. But yeah, it's definitely not everywhere. And yeah, that there's no problems with ICE in Evanston. That's correct. All right. Now, the peace president seems to want a war with Venezuela. The hell did Venezuela ever do to us? I mean, look, I don't like this guy Maduro. He's not a great guy, but and they're blowing up ships. And we talked about this weeks and weeks ago, and I said if he keeps doing this, he's going to need to go and get a declaration of war, because you can't just blow up ships ad nauseum without getting a declaration of war, because that is what you're trying to start. And this article, I can find a lot of these. There's a lot of media asking the question, are you trying to change the regime? Now, if he's trying to change the regime, he definitely needs a declaration of war. Number two, this is what Bush did in Iraq. This is what Obama did in Libya. Haven't we had enough of these regime change adventures? Why is Trump, the peace president, supposedly inching us towards trying to change the regime in Venezuela? Or maybe he's not. Maybe I've got it wrong.
Michael, I think you may have it wrong, because if there's anyone to blame, it's a man who died many, many years ago named James Monroe. Mm-hmm. James Monroe was the president of the United States, and he established what's called the Monroe Doctrine. And you talked about Iraq and Libya. Well, those are not in what's called the Western Hemisphere.
Right.
We, under the Monroe Doctrine, are the guardians of the Western Hemisphere. This is our hemisphere. Stay off of our hemisphere. Stay out of our hemisphere. And the big problem there, as we've mentioned before, is China. And China had made inroads under Biden into South America. The greatest accomplishment that Marco Rubio is going to have as Secretary of State, I think, will be to secure the American hemisphere from the Chinese influence. And that's part of what we have here. The Venezuelans are the drug dealers for the Chinese that are producing the fentanyl and the poisons that are hitting our streets. It's chemical warfare that starts in China and ends up going through South America and the cartels and hitting our streets. It's the streets of Chicago, Michael. And so that's what we have here. We're not doing anything other than policing our own hemisphere. So we're not doing Libya. We're not doing regime change. We're not doing Iraq. It's no analogy whatsoever. We are policing our hemisphere. Trump's already said it. Maduro keeps it up, he's going to be dead. Okay, that's all it's going to come down.
It seems like he's inching towards war. You're going to need to get a declaration of war. And some of the Trump acolytes are saying that Marco Rubio is the greatest Secretary of State ever, which is kind of ridiculous. He's been Secretary of State not quite a year, but the greatest ever is James Madison, the man you mentioned, because he is the one who negotiated the Louisiana Purchase in the words of Bill Richardson, the greatest land deal in the history of humankind. But look at all the names we've dropped. I may try to work in my favorite American, Ulysses S. Grant. There, I worked him in. All right, so we're gonna see.
Mike,
He
I like
keeps
doing
blowing.
both.
Listen, he keeps blowing up ships. He keeps saying they're drug boats. He keeps providing absolutely no evidence there is. Blowing up a few ships here and there. No one in his administration bothers me more than Excess X. Like he's such a tough guy. You've blown up a ship. You're not a tough guy. The guy is like runs around doing physical training. He's in the back of some jet. He is overcompensating, but blowing up ships, you have to go and get a declaration of war. Those are acts of war. They've done it way more than anyone should allow them to do it without declaring a war. He doesn't want to declare a war because he wouldn't get one.
I don't believe that he needs to go to Congress at this point because, like I said, it's a police action at this point. We're policing our hemisphere.
It's not.
It's not. Are we looking to take over the territory of Venezuela?
You are committing acts of war. That is a war. You have to go and get a declaration.
No, you're policing.
This is the problem.
War,
see, he got away with it in Iran. Oh, I just did one bombing. I didn't have to go to Congress. It's okay. I shot down some Houthis. It's okay. He never goes to Congress and gets the permission, as is required by the U.S. Constitution. And now he's escalating it. And now he's inching us towards a war without getting a declaration. In fact, really, he hasn't explained the policy besides, I'm going to go kill people. I didn't know that was a policy of the U.S. All right, now, back in the South America, my favorite politician, Javier Milei, this guy not only believes most of the things I believe, but is very effective in implementing them. He's done a pretty good job in Argentina, but for some reason, his good friend Donald Trump gave him $40 billion, $20 billion. And then that led to, they have parliamentary elections. I don't know exactly how it all goes. He won. He wasn't on the ballot, but his as you can see, the decisive victory of President Javier Milei gave him a critical boost. So his policies will continue to be implemented. But if he's doing such a good job, why did Trump need to give him $20 billion?
You help out your friends, Michael. That's how it is. He's shoring up.
I thought Trump was about making America great and worrying about domestic issues and end all this money to other places. But I guess if you're his friend, then you get money.
Of course, if you're a friend ideologically and you're a friend, an ally of the United States, then you will get good things. And what he's doing in South America and in Argentina is advancing American interests that we've always had by keeping the Chinese out, giving the communists not an inch. The same thing is happening in Italy with Meloni, Giorgia Meloni. The fact is that when you have people that are stridently anti-communist, pro-capitalist, and pro-values that we share, of course you're gonna help them. You're gonna give them preferential deals.
I have to disagree. Milei and Trump do not share the same values. For instance, Milei thinks that you should spend within your means, whereas Donald Trump is perfectly fine taking our debt to $40 trillion. So I completely disagree with you on that. We do not share philosophical we do not share philosophical we're not philosophically aligned because Milei thinks that we should actually have a smaller government and live within our means, and Trump doesn't agree with that. On the central issue
Michael,
that makes Milei function, he is completely opposite. He's where Trump should be, but doesn't want to be because it's very hard to cut spending, whereas Milei has figured out how to do it.
The fact is they're aligned by your own admission because we're talking about spending and not nationalization. That's the first thing. But they're not communists. God knows.
Speaking of nationalization, Trump has taken a stake in Intel and some other companies. So, if we're talking about nationalization, Trump isn't even really a capitalist on that. Okay, next Tuesday.
And speaking of communists, let's go to New York.
Right. Well, speaking of communists, next Tuesday, New York City is going to vote. The front runner is this guy, Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo, and who's the last guy? Curtis Sliwa.
Curtis Sliwa.
All right. So can I tell you why I think that Mamdani is going to win?
Why?
One, he has an affable demeanor, so he presents himself well. He presents himself as somebody you like, which masks a lot of his radical policies. Two, he's buying the election. He's like, I'm going to freeze your rent. I'm going to give you free health care. You're not going to pay for buses. Obviously, trying to implement that will never work, but it's a great way to win an election. It's probably a tough way to win a re-election because once they realize you can't do any of it or it falls apart, you won't win re-election. But it's a great way to win an election. And number three, and the most important thing, his opponents are awful. All right. He had the corrupt mayor who should be in jail, Eric Adams. He realized he couldn't win. He had the corrupt governor who had to resign. Cuomo family is an institution, but he had to resign. Now he's running for New York mayor. It's funny watching these conservatives. Oh, Cuomo, we hate Cuomo. Come on. And Sliwa, they're all saying Sliwa should get out of the race because it'll all go to Cuomo. I don't think it'll all go to Cuomo, but conservatives don't want Cuomo to win. So if Rudy Giuliani right now was running against Mamdani, he wouldn't win, I don't think. Definitely Rudy Giuliani 20, 30 years ago would beat him. Ed Koch would beat him. Michael Bloomberg would beat him. Obviously, Theodore LaGuardia, I think I got that right. Guardia would mop the floor with him. Right. Yeah, New York has had brilliant mayors. This is a down period. Since Bloomberg,
this guy's John Lindsay. Right. Mike, this guy's John Lindsay. If you talk in New York, this guy is John Lindsay. And we talked about this with the know nothings. You said it. I don't think when Mamdani, he's going to get in. It's the vote. The mathematics are there that he's going to get in unless something really crazy happens. But something really crazy is happening, Michael, in the turnout. The early voting has already started. It started on Saturday in New York. And the early returns show that there's a huge number of 50-plus voters coming out. So the 50-plus voters, in some places 6 times as much as in 2021, which was the last mayoral. 6 times as much. So
is this part of a trend, though? Is this part of a trend where people like to vote early, that they try to get it out of the way? Is that I think that this has gone on in the last few elections where the early voting dramatically surpasses the prior. It doesn't necessarily mean more people are voting. I think almost everyone is aware that early voting is an option. And so more and more people are taking advantage of it. It doesn't mean that there's more people who will vote. I think people are like, I know what I'm going to vote for. And I think the lines will be a lot shorter if I go and do it right now.
Well, when you have 5 and 6 times the numbers coming out in an election, it shows that there's a lot more voter mobilization. Right. I think that the numbers are far good. I think you're to say in New York.
You have 3 weak candidates, and I just can't believe you're going to have this massive turnout for these 3 guys. But maybe I'm wrong.
But New York, if you look at the numbers, New York is going to far surpass the 2021 turnout. That's the pull operations. You have 3 separate people, and that means you have 3 separate pull operations. So you got to understand. And plus, you have all the down ballot. You have all the Republican, and you have all the Democrat down ballot, and you have a lot of different things going on, a lot of different races. So there's going to be a lot more turnout, and so a lot of 50 plus coming out does not bode well for Mamdani in the sense that he's got to meet that with the young people. But that being said, that 50 plus is split between Sliwa and Cuomo. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Okay. So before we talk, our next segment is What the Hales, about Jeremy Hales and his YouTube channel that's very popular, where he's trying to standardize his business model of suing people frivolously, including you. He hasn't sued me, but here is what he did try to do to me. Let's listen for a second, and then we'll talk about why this episode will not be on my YouTube channel.
Mr. Volpe. Volpe. This is Officer Pongrass with the Peninsula Police Department. I was just calling to let you know, do not contact Jeremy Hales anymore from this point on. The report has been filed, and if you continue to contact him, you will be charged with telecommunications harassment. If you have any questions, give me a call, 330-657-2911. Thank you.
All right, so Hales has no use for free speech. If it's his free speech, he will sue you frivolously to take away your free speech. He will file a frivolous protective order to take away your free speech. He will try to use cops to intimidate you. And if he can't take away your free speech, then he will try to censor you in other ways. So over the weekend, YouTube took my entire account down, claiming that I had nudity and sexual content. I think I know what that is. You put a bunch of dildos behind you with a photo of Rosalind Duke, one of his one of his followers who likes to do propaganda, pro-Hales propaganda, to make fun of her. Now, YouTube has a somewhat vague policy on, I guess nudity isn't vague. There was no one nude. She wasn't nude. There was no explicit sexual content, but they also have fetishes. Is it possible that you putting a bunch of dildos behind Rosalind Duke was considered fetishes? And does that mean that Jeremy Hales is right, that I should have my YouTube channel removed entirely?
Well, number one, you didn't do it, Michael, right? Number one,
but I put it up.
What you're doing falls squarely under the educational, documentary, scientific, and artistic exception.
All right, hold on. Educational, documentary, and scientific, and what?
And artistic.
All right, now you didn't just come up with, where are those four words put together? Where does that come together?
That comes right from the YouTube and Google terms of service.
All right, so that terms of service. Now, if your video falls under educational, artistic, documentarian, or scientific, what does YouTube say?
It says that it applies a different standard than the standard that is applied for normal videos, especially if it comes from someone who's a journalist, who's doing documentary and educational and type situations.
And we were documenting and discussing the Hales situation and the legalities and the social nuance surrounding it. And obviously,
Michael was documenting me. You were documenting my picture.
Right, the photo wasn't meant to be sexual.
Satire.
But you were insulting her. But they have a separate term of service on harassment, which is extremely vague. The main problem I have is, number one, I have several problems with YouTube. One, they won't say what specifically I did wrong, except for sexual and nude content. They won't say what video it's in. They won't even allow me to remove that part or even just remove that video. No, in one fell swoop, the entire channel has gone away. Now, what was I going to say? I've had that channel for 15 years. In the first 14 years, I had a handful of complaints, mostly for alleged privacy violations. One video was removed. I watched a hearing out of Minnesota, and I recorded part of it. I put it online, and the county reached out to YouTube and gave them their rules on recording videos, which were prohibited, and YouTube removed that. That's it. Of all the videos in 15 years, I had one problem with one video. And since I've covered the Hales case, which is about 10 months, I've been accused of harassment, invasion of privacy, now sexual and nude content. And I just can't believe that YouTube's algorithm, whatever you want to call it, their software can't pick that up, that they hone in on me instead of the software saying, wait a minute, you have a channel who's had no problems and suddenly all of these complaints all at once. Maybe we should look at the complaints and figure out if they are genuine. So that's the problem I have with YouTube. Now, I want to show one other thing. As my controversy was unfolding, a much bigger controversy in the world of social media was unfolding, though it's not as important to me. One of my favorite Twitter accounts. My favorite is 3-Year Letterman, but this guy is really good. Damon Towell, he's that's kind of a photo of Damon, not exactly, but he's liberal. He's not crazy left. He's an attorney. He's extremely intelligent on legal issues. He's pretty witty. He got into a Twitter spat with a redheaded libertarian, I think is her thing. And she's got nearly 1 million followers, or whatever you call it, on Twitter. And then he gets suspended in the same way. And it's basically, if you take on someone in social media with a big enough megaphone, the way that Jeremy Hales has, you can almost guarantee that you're going to be suspended or removed, because they can sick, SIC, I think I've got that right, their followers on you and have this mass complaint all at once, what I believe Hales did. Now, redheaded libertarian is denying it. I never told my follower, and she wouldn't have to. By her complaining about him to her 700,000 followers, you don't think 1,000 are going to complain about him? Of course they will. So, it means that you can't really engage too much if you don't have enough with anyone with enough followers, because you're liable to have this mass reporting the way I had, the way that Damon had. And I don't know what the fix is. Obviously, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, they have to use the software. You can't have a human. You'd have to hire half the world then. So you have to do it through a software, and you can't ignore reports. So how do you fix it?
You got to sue.
You got to sue,
Michael. I think you got to sue. I think you got to sue.
What should you? If you were running YouTube and you hear this, and you say, it sounds like our policies are wrong. Well, how would you fix the policies then? You're like, that this is clearly a mass report. They're clearly doing something frivolous, but how do we fix? Can we get the software to recognize that this is
there's several nefarious points that are not in evidence right now. The first is that Jeremy Hales has a business relationship with YouTube, so that is an issue. He makes several $100,000 a month, as people say, so as much as a couple $100,000 a month on YouTube.
Listen,
for his
that
program.
For YouTube though is a rounding error on top of a rounding error on top of a rounding error. That should not be.
No, but as a policy, right? As a policy, you're going to protect the creators that are making you money. So Michael Volpe, you're not a large creator making money. Okay, even if it's a drop in the bucket, his drop is a lot bigger than yours. So as a policy and an economic reason, they're the pecuniary motivations. Their monetary motivations are to protect Hales at the expense of free speech, journalistic protection, and even their own terms of service.
Hold on. But if by doing that, the message is sent, and it will if it's done enough times, that you can't challenge bigger creators because then you're going to be removed, then you're creating a platform where people aren't free to say what they want to say, and it's a worse platform. And then in the end, that's going to eventually cause you business because you're going to have a platform that isn't as dynamic.
Well, that's what's happened already. Rumble has got a lot of the conservatives on it. A lot of the conservatives moved over to Rumble. And the other point is that
here's the thing about YouTube. YouTube could remove all of its political content, and it would be a rounding error on a rounding error. Do you remember the song "Smells Like Teen Spirit"?
Yeah.
By Nirvana. Over 1 billion people have seen that music video. Toto Africa, over 1 billion people. Most Michael Jackson videos, over 1 billion people have witnessed them. Cat videos get hundreds of millions of views.
People doing dumb stuff, like people slip and fall and all that
Children's
stuff.
content. This
ultimate.
This guy Blippy, who annoys
animals.
me.
Yeah,
right. Blippy annoys me, but my son loves him and he's beloved. They've got
Bluey and Bluey.
Bluey is huge on YouTube, and it's much bigger. the other thing about YouTube, their bread is not buttered in any one space. It's all over the place. So they don't care. Yeah, Rumble, you want all the conservatives? You're a drop in the bucket. Now you're 3 drops in this big bucket. It doesn't matter. But if YouTube creates a platform that favors these big creators where smaller ones don't want to take them on, then it's not dynamic, and that does, I think, eventually hurt them. They have to. They don't understand what he's doing and how it hurts them. He's suing other YouTubers. He is going after their YouTube channels. If other people get that idea, then YouTube is going to be a place where if you go and take someone on, you're going to be sued, you're going to be canceled, and they should realize that.
Well,
You know,
Michael,
this is
Michael, you gotta
ridiculous.
understand.
My channel is removed for nudity and sexual content. Like, where did you get that from?
Textual. It's pretextual, and here's the point. You got to look at. I think really the guidepost here is free expression. What was the point of the framers saying why we needed an open society, a marketplace of ideas, a First Amendment? Because when thoughts fly and when speech flies, bullets don't, right?
Right.
And so if you look at this the right way, we have a framework in our country as to when you have expression, we have a tradition where expression shouldn't be stifled. These guys are common carriers. They're public squares, the modern day public squares. So if you have a situation where your free speech is stifled, you go to the arms of government.
But I disagree. Whoa. No, YouTube isn't a public square. YouTube is Alphabet owns YouTube. It's a publicly traded company. Anyone can get a piece of YouTube, but it's not a public square. It's not the same thing as going to Central Park.
They're a cancer. So they're a cancer. Then by executive order, Trump could excise them tomorrow. Then is what you're saying.
But
They're
that
not
would be wrong. YouTube is what it is because of the people who created it and the employees and the people who took risks. It's not a public entity.
If they're going against the Constitution, fuck them.
They can't go against the Constitution.
Right
they have a right to set policies the way they want. The marketplace dictates that. But I don't want them to be taken over by the government, though.
I want them to be destroyed by the government. That you have a sitting CEO of that company that his allegiances are questionable. What he's doing there is questionable as a major CEO of a company. This is a large free speech issue. It's been this way for years. And we talked about the Florida deplatforming statute before. We'll talk about it right now. You have places Illinois doesn't have a lot of protects the same way that Florida does. It doesn't protect journalists. It doesn't protect creators. It doesn't protect people who are engaged in the educational, documentary, scientific, and artistic exposition. There's not a true marketplace of ideas if it's funneled down a certain way, okay? And the fact of the matter is YouTube does become a common carrier to a certain extent. They do. A lot of these social utilities become a common carrier. We have a problem, and the problem is the law, okay? We have a First Amendment, but the Section 230 immunity, especially when you have this pecuniary relationship, this monetary relationship with specific creators, there's Ninth Circuit law and there's other circuit law that says that the 230 immunity does not apply. So that is the answer here, I think, Michael. The answer is that when you have large creators that are favored by these social media companies, these broadcast companies, these platforms, and they have their own people on the inside, they have a YouTube manager. Hales has somebody with YouTube that he calls up, the account manager or the client relations manager. When you have that stuff, you're no longer 230. You're no longer the neutral arbiter. You're no longer the zebra. You're not the referee. You are somebody that's putting your thumb on the scale on which content you want to push and which content you don't. And your content's getting pushed out. And if they're doing that, there's no Section 230 immunity. So you could sue Jeremy Hales and his entire criminal group that did this to you, as well as you can sue YouTube for failing to follow their own rules. If you're talking about free markets are based on contract law, right? And they breach their contract with you bigly. You could get $10 million worth of damages here, Michael, if you do this the right way.
You are presuming that he's got an in no one else does based on his language, which he may have deliberately or maybe even not deliberately mischaracterized. Anyone can file a complaint with YouTube. Doesn't mean that he's got a direct link to a specific person. The way he sounded in one of his videos, it sounded like that, but that doesn't mean that's what's actually going on.
lawsuit.
So we don't know that he has a special deal
will
with
after the
YouTube
lawsuit.
that no one else does.
You will when you sue the crap out of him and get all his, give him a legal equivalency of a proctology exam. That's when you do. When you do that,
I don't like to sue. I'll think about it, but I don't like to sue. All right. In our second part of the What the Hell segment, this is a great example of his complete distaste for the First Amendment. He doesn't like his neighbors. He sued his neighbors, but he hates his neighbors. That's John Cook and Michelle Preston, who live in Otter Creek, Florida. He hates them so much that he went to Summit County, Ohio, where only he has a residence, and got a protective order. And he did right here, dated October 31st, 2023. Well, it wasn't good enough for him to have a 2-year protective order. So right as that 2-year protective order was about to expire, he filed, I don't know if they call it a motion, whatever he filed, asking to extend it. And here is his reasoning. Respondent has willfully and intentionally violated this order on multiple occasions. Respondent has already been found in contempt of this order twice. Petitioner has been forced to file a third contempt of this order because of escalating conflict. Respondents regularly have corresponded with third parties who have created anti-Jeremy Hale's online network. Third parties acting as a voice for respondent post continued harassing messages on a regular basis. Third parties solicited by respondent have made threats against petitioner's life. The current protection order is set to expire October 2025. The current protection order does not bar respondent from possessing our firearms. He provides no specifics or evidence about what he's talking about, but he's, number one, if somebody else is threatening you, you need to get a protective order against them. Number two, he's basically saying that if people go online and talk bad about me, I should get my protective order against John Cook and Michelle Preston extended, even if it's not John Cook and Michelle Preston, even if John Cook and Michelle Preston could go online and talk bad about me. He is using protective orders to create propaganda. But let me just explain this. This is garbage. No competent judge should allow this to move forward. However, he got lucky because he doesn't have a competent judge. He has a ringer judge named Candy O'Connor. Now, I'm going to give you a contrast. I was in court in North Carolina, Guilford County, North Carolina, and the judge who was presiding was Angela Foster, who has some I'll say ethical issues of her own. She tried to intercede in her son's criminal case in a really bad way. But in this particular day, right there, Angela Foster, she heard a woman brought in a voicemail, and the voicemail was the entirety of the evidence, whether or not this woman should get a protective order. And it was a family member. I think it was her son, but I might be wrong. Some family member. And he's like screaming, curse word, curse word, curse word. If you sell my shit, I'm going to burn the whole fucking house down. Screaming, swear word, the end of the voicemail. And Judge Foster says, can you play that again? Did I hear an if? And she did hear an if. If you sell my shit, I'll burn the fucking house down. She denied it because that's not a direct threat. That's not an immediate threat. The if was the key. Now, that is the way a judge who interprets the law, who understands the law, deals with protective orders. This lady, the guy gives a bunch of vague allegations and she grants him a hearing, and they are supposed to fly to Ohio on November 3rd. That's when the hearing is going to be. Completely ridiculous. He's got judges who seem to be doing his bidding in a bunch of different places. Hales, that is. This guy Bolitho is probably the worst of them. But this lady Candy O'Connor is just this is awful. This is just completely just taking a sledgehammer to all parts of protective order law. Any thoughts that you have?
This is the definition of, hometowning and why we have due process and why we have minimum contacts. And it's just a real problem that he's going to run up to an Ohio judge. It's a real problem he's running into federal court at the same time. He's claiming that he's this Ohio resident, right? So he's an Ohio resident and his problems with people in Florida. How's he getting a protective order in Ohio with people who've never stepped foot in Ohio? You think about it, this is like the fundamental fairness type thing,
Now,
you
let
know?
me
It's fundamentally
interject.
unfair, but
Hold on. Let me interject. The way that he did it was because Michelle sent an email to the mayor's office in Peninsula, Ohio. That was enough for Candy O'Connor. And then, according to his lawyers, Tad Hoover and Eli Heller, I might have the last names switched. Eli and Tad Hoover and Heller, I don't remember who is who. But anyway, then they said the rest of the evidence comes from interactions in Florida. And I believe he did go to try to get one in Florida and he was denied that. But yeah, he's hometowning it. That's why jurisdiction, which makes a lot of people get bored, is very, very important. That all courts, the first thing the court has to determine is whether they are appropriate to hear something. Because without it, you go wherever you feel like it and you try to get an advantage. And he clearly is trying to get an advantage.
have a right to go to law enforcement and petition for grievances or address grievances. Any type of place, anywhere. You could call up any law enforcement and talk about a problem. You know, if you think that you see one, that's not something that's harmful. If when you abuse the system, like Hales's people have, they're the ones that have abused it and call multiple times and have multiple people calling and flood them with calls. That becomes the abuse. Now, the other part about this is, you know, we talked about this before. Remember what he's trying to do now? He's trying to get someone past the goalie in Ohio, and then what's he using to go and try to bring it down to Florida? The Violence Against Women Act.
Right.
He's using laws that are not intended to be used in this way. That there are real victims. He's making domestic violence. He's kind of, you know, basically, you know, slapping the face of every domestic violence victim, a real domestic violence victim, by trying to get some order, trying to say that he's harassed when it's not true. He's a mega influencer. He's a huge microphone. He injects himself into everything. He has a huge reach, and he's trying to pretend that he's someone that needs the protection of the laws the same way that a domestic violence victim would. And that's just wrong, I think. That's a fundamentally wrong thing for somebody to take the law and twist it in this way.
I have a question for you. I think if you cover this case for more than 15 minutes, you realize quickly that what this guy does is he sues everyone, goes after everyone, he creates legal cases. Why does he have? Why does anyone find any of this attractive? Why would you want to root for someone whose entire goal in life is to sue anyone he can, to take anyone he can to court, to try to get the police on anyone he can, to threaten to intercede in anybody's child custody case, as he did with me? Why does anyone find any of this attractive? Why would you root for someone like this?
Dangerous. He's been trained in the manipulation. Okay, and the skills that he got in his divinity schooling and in his ministry are things that are supposed to be used by moral men. They're techniques that are very, with great power comes great responsibility, and you have an ability to communicate to a large mass of people, and with that comes responsibility, because that's powerful. You can change the course of many people's lives, make them believe things, and you have to be more to truth. And you have to be more to justice, and you have to be more to morality. Jeremy is not more to those things. He's basically a cult leader at this point. And so the problem becomes, you know, the first thing, and social science research bears this out. The first thing is about likability. You know, you're much more willing to listen to somebody and hear what they have to say if you perceive them as likable, right? That's why politicians, the first thing they go towards is likability. Oh, I like that person. That's the first step.
Hold on, but why would you like this guy? He sues everyone. If you can't sue him, he calls the cops on you. If you can't do that, he gets a protective order. What sort of person finds any of these tactics to be likable? Don't you all see that this is like the worst of the worst? You are a legal abuser. You don't see that?
He is a legal abuser, but look at the cultiness aspect of it, right? Well, they bring you in, you start to like the cult person, and then they bring you in and they indoctrinate you with the cult. And then it's us versus them. You're part of the cult, you're us. And everybody that's against us is them. And the cult controls the knowledge, the cult controls the communication, the cult controls the truth. And so everybody else out there is against us. And so there's no truth in what they do. and they can't be liked, and they can't be everything are demonized. So this is typical cult psychology. You know, we've seen this before. We saw this a lot with Nexium. We saw this a lot with some of the other cults that we've seen recently. This is class like David Koresh. This is classic stuff. You know, this is nothing new under the sun.
Is that why Megan Fox, who had been my friend from 2014 to 2024, would stop being my friend because I would report this in a way she didn't like, as opposed to just either accepting that on this issue we disagree, or even trying to convince me that is this like a cult-like belief system that's been ingrained in her, that anyone, including your friend of 10 years, who reports negatively on Jeremy Hales has to be your enemy? Is that a cult-like system that's been ingrained in her?
It seems to me to be that, you know, she's been co-opted, right? The Megan that you know before, you said it, would never have been co-opted like this. It has to be something that has done it. And it's not just money, because she's not doing, you know, Hale's content exclusively anymore. She's covered some other cases now. So she's making money on other things. I think she's starting to realize that the sugar pop, you know, phenomenon with Hales might be. She
definitely realizes that if it's all Hales all the time, that's not a good long-term business model. Now, that umbrella guy who's her cohort hasn't realized that. But look, she and I interviewed Grant Wyeth, the journalist from Australia. We interviewed Wayne Dolcefino, one of the greatest journalists in the history of the U.S. We interviewed Liz Perkins, an award-winning journalist from England. We did a lot of great interviews. Now she is gallivanting around the country with Rosalind Duke. So I don't know how much more money she's making, but she's gone from interviewing serious journalists all over the world, talking about serious things, trying to change laws, challenging judges, to, you know, hooking up with Rosalind Duke. So, you know, if that's what she thinks is advancing, I guess. I don't know if it's like a cult-like thing, but I don't. What broke us up, you would think if I was really her friend, she would just call me and try to explain herself, but she just went off on me because I wanted to go on Milltown's Best to talk about not even this case, but another case, Milltown's Best, who she doesn't like. Well, so what? Who cares? Why does that bother you? And yeah, it seems like it's a little bit cult-like.
It's a bit culty because they make them the other, you know. That's the thing. You have to be with us or you're against us. And then they control narrative. They control truth. Think about, you know, Keith Raniere, right? Think about Keith Raniere wormed his way in with all these people into their minds and the stuff that they were doing on, you know, at his behest. This isn't Keith Raniere level. I don't think anybody's genitalia is getting branded, but it's still, you know, what people are doing with Jeremy, the defense of Jeremy, and then they're engaging in criminality, in my opinion, with this harassment, the mass harassment campaigns, the mass reporting campaigns. At the very least, they're doing things that are not true, right? They're being not truthful. And then that goes back to the responsibility that somebody has like Jeremy, if he's going to be a shepherd of his flock. That was he was trained to be, the shepherd of the flock. And now he's some type of a cult leader because he's not shepherding his flock towards truth or goodness. He's shepherding his flock towards the ends that he determines. And he's attacking you on your YouTube. And he's attacking me. He's attacking Ray Bonecrusher. He's attacking senior citizens. He's attacking people who don't have the means to defend themselves. And that is not what the tradition was that he was trained in. And that's not the power that he was given from that tradition. He's a bastard. He's a bastardization of this entire process.
And we should know he got both of your YouTube accounts dismissed until you sent YouTube Legal a very pointed email, and then they were both restored. I'm still
They're
working.
afraid of Florida deplatforming law. That's
right.
the thing. You don't have it in Illinois.
We'll see how YouTube responds. They're all convinced that it's been removed for good, but nothing is ever for good. All right. So as part of our What the Hell segment, we talk about another gentleman, the Nash Noshirvan, because the two of them are very similar, including that they have scumbag lawyers who do their bidding. In Dinesh's case, it's Nick Chiappetta. In Jeremy Hale's case, it is Randall Shockett. They also both like to be in court a lot. They are internet agitators. There are many similarities. Now you've got an article up. Let's play the 2-minute video, and then we're going to talk about the article. And that is Dinesh you're looking at.
Was arrested recently after they boxed him in with their vehicles to arrest him, and he rammed his car up against their vehicles to try to escape. While he was trying to escape, they attempted to murder him when they shot him. One of those bullets ricocheted and hit a U.S. Marshal. Were these unmarked vehicles boxing him in and he was scared for his life the way agents don't identify themselves? Because if so, I understand why he'd want to escape. Or was it clearly ICE? Which, if so, he could be sent to like a Venezuelan prison. So I understand why he tried to escape. Maybe they did say they were federal agents, but there are people, so many people in the news that go around lying and saying that they're ICE. How do you know? Maybe you're being kidnapped. Who knows? Who really knows? And on the inverse, maybe they are ICE, and you're going to go to a foreign concentration camp. Let's talk about ICE agents just shooting at people over these like immigration laws. They shot him and they're charging him with assault. After the ICE agent tried to murder him, the bullet ricocheted and hit another federal agent. And you're going to say, hey, Donish, don't encourage violence. Encourage violence? Where did the bullet come from? Who shot the bullet? Where did the bullet come from? Who was the violent one? After Trump's Nazi force boxed him in, I would never feel safe around ICE. I would never feel safe around ICE. I heard there was a guy who's a legal resident of the United States who got fined by ICE for not having his papers on him. What kind of Nazi shit is that? To anybody who cares about that ICE agent who was shot.
So this video highlights one difference between Dinesh and Jeremy Hales. Dinesh is very political. Hales, I don't see very much political content. He might be conservative, but Dinesh goes into different areas. He definitely is a left wing, as you can tell, but almost all of his videos have a political part of it. Hales is more like my personal life. So that's a very big difference. All right, but he's making fun of ICE agents. He's making fun of them being shot. A lot of the stuff he said was accurate. They did fine a guy $130 because he didn't have his papers on him. The confrontations, there are a lot of confrontations. If I was of a different skin color and ICE was near the area, I'd be afraid too. But that has nothing to do with your article, so I don't know why you put that video up. Are you just trying to smear the guy?
No, this is what this is all part and parcel, because the case is made that he's committed federal crimes, and so if he's going in and he's getting these ICE agents and these U.S. Marshals and putting their lives in danger, putting their families' lives in danger by doxing them, we're adding to it. But this is about an affidavit that he filed last Friday, and the affidavit itself is larded with lies. The biggest lie of which is that Dinesh and his relationship with Nick Chiappetta, his scumbag lawyer, basically he says in that affidavit that he's on a hourly fee pay go type situation. We have it, and he said that in paragraph 23 of the affidavit, the sworn affidavit, that Nick Chiappetta and him don't have a contingency agreement. We have previously filed documents from 2024, conversations from Dinesh that says, yes, me and Nick have a contingency fee agreement. So they're lying to the court. And why this is important, Mike, is because we've covered it before. He was put on notice on August 12th of 2025 this year by Judge Steele. Any more bad faith in this case by Nick?
Wait. This will be fun. What is Judge Steele's first name?
Judge John Steele.
John Steele. Which president appointed this guy?
Your favorite president,
Bill Clinton, a Clinton appointee. All right, you stick with us, and you're gonna learn the appointees, and we're gonna really get you built up with knowing the federal judiciary. So Judge Steele in August issued a very scathing order and continue about how this relates to what's happening right now.
So if you see that right in front of us, see right there, the 277-304-60, right? He claims that he's owed or was paid 277, 304.60 to date in his case with Dinesh. That's how much he's into Dinesh for. He's saying that he's gotten paid by the hour and he's not getting paid on a contingency. Now, that doesn't square with what was just said in this piece of paper that's there, the request for recommendation, because in August, remember, he was found that he committed bad faith. He was in a deposition. He ran the deposition. He called a black civil rights lawyer a low-class racist. But read what it says right there, that paragraph 38.
What do you, because GPS timesheets are extremely excessive, riddled with other issues, as addressed in paragraphs 15 to 29, and Noshirvan is a man of modest means. Noshirvan respectfully requests that this court reconsider its sanction award entirely. Noshirvan requests that the court deny defendant's motion to quantify fee award in its entirety. Alternatively, award a modest flat sanction of $5,000. And in no event should this court award more than 25 hours at the proposed reduced hourly rate above for a motion and half-day evidentiary hearing. Explain what does that mean?
So he's saying that the law firm, that because of all his bad faith, Dinesh's antics and his harassment and everything else, this law firm had $100,000 in additional fees and motions and security and everything else, and they put in for it. The judge said, "Okay, put in for it on August 12th, and we'll pay it out. I just have to look at it."
Wait, now hold on. I got a question for you. If he has billed $277,000 to Dinesh, how is Dinesh a person of modest means?
And that's the question
many
of the day,
people
Michael.
who are persons of modest means who can afford a legal bill of $277,000 and some change?
So either A, there's some dishonesty going on, or B, there's something predatory going on in the sense that Chiapetta is overbilling somebody who can never have a chance to pay. They're either lying in the first or lying in the second. If you go down a little further, we use one of our favorite lines from Princess Bride.
Do not think it means what you think it means. Hold on.
Got very good arms.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable. You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
He keeps using modest, and I don't think it means what he thinks it means.
And that's the point. It's like, how do you get $300,000 into a client? First, he says Dinesh says it's a contingency case. Okay, you can understand the case if it's a contingency. Dinesh doesn't pay anything if he loses. But if it's not a contingency,
so later he said he's being paid by the hour.
In this document, yes, he says he's being paid by the hour. If you go down to the last
page,
look,
if he's being paid by the hour, then obviously Dinesh is not a person of modest means.
That's right. But go down to the last paragraph. And that's what makes this and a lot of this stuff has been contradicted by Steele already in his August 12th order. But this is just one little iota here to look at, and it unravels. You pull the string and it unravels the whole thing. Paragraph 23, right there. Look at paragraph 23.
As a result of Camp, that's Joseph Camp, another person involved in this case, harassment and intimidation. This is another way that the two, Dinesh and Hales, are similar. They both love to use these kinds of words. They have massive platforms, but everyone harasses and intimidates them. Directed at Robson Powers, Mr. Powers withdrew from my case. As a result of Mr. Powers' withdrawal, I hired Chiapetta trial lawyers and an increased hourly rate to defend him in that our fee arrangement for 034 is not contingent. After application of my prior payment, my current contractual obligation currently provide is $277,304. Chiapetta trial lawyers increased rate create a difference of $132,000 based on the hours expended. This guy's going to spend so much money, whether he wins or loses, it doesn't matter, it sounds like. But I am very, very confused. Can you help me out here? How can he then say I'm a person of modest means and also say that I've been charged $277,000? And if I'm following correctly, if you take the difference between this and this, that difference is how much he's paid. How can someone who has paid $130,000 to his lawyer be of modest means?
It's either that or it's fraudulent right now. They're just doing that to gin up a creation of fees as damages. So either way, there's a problem. There's a level of dishonesty. And Judge Steele said, any more bad faith, I'm dismissing this case. I think we have it right here. We have bad faith that is enough to dismiss this case. If you go down a little bit further, the entire, and I break it down, the entire thing is, it lays it out for anybody that wants to read. It's a pretty long article and it details it in detail. But if you go down to some of the section headings, it shows that and this is the background of the story. But this is, and it shows all the victims that he's had. This is the background of Dinesh.
But when I break down, for those who don't know Dinesh, he is the Supreme Court doxer. He doxed the Supreme Court, and one mentally unstable person tried to kill which one? Alito. Alito's my favorite.
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh. All right. Kavanaugh's all right, but Alito I like a lot. So I don't know if he saw Dinesh's thing. We can't for sure make the connection. However, Dinesh definitely doxed the U.S. Supreme Court. Go ahead.
So if you go down a little more, what he does is he tries to make this guy Joey Camp, who's a journalist, and he was actually an anti-Antifa journalist, and he was in Kenosha, he was in Denver, he was in places where there was all these uprisings in 2020, 2021, and he would go into the crowds dressed with a mask on, and he would videotape the Antifa people, and then he would identify them, and he would put their faces up on the internet. And so Antifa has a warrant out, not a warrant, but Antifa has a bounty out, an international bounty out for Joey Camp. So he's in hiding in South America. But if you go down, I actually have a bit of a roadmap there. So roadmap for the feds, the falsehoods. So he comes in, and like you said about Jeremy Hales, they say they're harassed and intimidated and everything else. They ignore what the original context of what Dinesh does is, the original doxing context. What Dinesh does, and the court had said it, Sherry Polster Chappell, who was appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, she was the first judge on the 340 case, and she said, well, this guy is doxing for hire. He basically goes out there and he's like some type of vigilante, and that's his business model, you know? And so he went out there and he doxed these people to begin with, Jennifer Couture and Dr. Ralph Garamone. But he's like
Wait, but how is that different from Joey Camp? Isn't Joey Camp doing the same thing?
Well, they're kind of doing potentially the same thing, but the way the Dinesh saying he's not the one, he's not the victim of harassment. You know, he's the instigator. How do you throw the first punch and how do you throw the first punch and then complain that you got knocked out?
I want to point this out. This is pretty important, I think. There's one other important difference between the Dinesh case and and Jeremy Hales, and that is in the Dinesh case, it seems like a lot of the judges are what you call Article 3 judges, like John Steele, like this lady. In Hales, when he gets into federal court, he gets the magistrate, the flunky, in this case, this guy, Zach Bolitho, and he's getting second-rate judges, and that, I think, is helping him, whereas Dinesh is, a lot of his BS is not being allowed in. And I think that's an important difference that if, and of course, if was a fifth, we'd all be drunk, but if Hales had faced the full judges, the district judges, I think a lot of this stuff wouldn't have gotten as far as it did in the way that Dinesh is forced to go in front of the full judges for the most part. I think from time to time he does get a magistrate, but I think that's an important difference. Go ahead.
But this story breaks down that affidavit, and it gets very technical. So if you're interested in the case, read it. It gives a full background of the story, and then it talks about that. But the big one, I think, is the one that Frank wrote about, and that's out, about Nick Chiappetta. Nick Chiappetta's got some big issues with honesty and truthfulness, and our friend Frank Parlato published on the Frank Report about it.
All right, and we're going to get that story up here in just 1 second. So Frank Parlato, who broke Nexim, which you have mentioned, runs the Frank Report, which is frankreport.com. And here is an article from the 29th. I think that's this morning.
That's today. This is breaking news.
Right. So what happened here?
This is about Nick Chiappetta. Nick Chiappetta admitted that he lied and he impersonated another attorney in this Dinesh Nashirvan case.
Is that wrong? Is that wrong?
You know what? And Frank makes the point that if if you impersonate somebody and you get a benefit out of it, that becomes aggravated identity theft. That's obstruction of justice. It's all sorts of federal crimes. So here's what he did. There was PTESQ, PT at PTESQ.com is Patrick Traynor. Okay. And so there was another email that was made, PTESQ1 at yahoo.com. It was a simulation account. Okay. And then it was sent around. And what was it there for? It was there to impersonate Patrick Traynor's email to fool people into thinking that it was Patrick Traynor. Okay. How was this uncovered? Chiappetta told on himself. Go down, Michael. Go down to this graphic right there. See that graphic? That graphic was part of something that Chiappetta filed in court pleadings. Okay. And so at the top, see where it says one unread, PTESQ1. So it was in the court record from Chiappetta's filing that he had that open on his screen. Okay. And so if you go down, first thing he does is he gets confronted by what's his name? By Patrick Traynor. And he says, where you see that? Chiappetta admitted, read that.
I made a Yahoo account in 2023 utilizing the email address ptesq1 at yahoo.com. After the account was made, I never used the account. Childish, perhaps in retrospect, but definitely nothing nefarious as you falsely allege.
So then he sends the screenshot, right? And then Frank does some digging. Look at what Yahoo's policy is about things that he said was in 2023.
Yahoo's policy is that if you don't log in for a year, the account is deleted. Emails, folders, contacts, everything. It's not dormant. It's gone. So he obviously has logged in at least once in the last year.
Go down and read that now. After 12 months, it becomes
one more. If not using the mailbox is considered inactive, it will stop receiving new emails, and all mailbox contents, folders, contacts, and settings are permanently deleted.
The email was from a 2025 screenshot, so it's 100%.
Right.
So,
right.
See what Frank says. There's only one reason Chiappetta made.
All right, now, in this particular case, now, is this a case where no Shirvan, or is this a case where he's representing someone else?
This is no Shirvan, and that Judge Dudek is now an Article 3 judge. He's an Article 3 judge now.
But he took this to this magistrate.
The magistrate was the first person to got to. He was a magistrate up until a few weeks ago, even. That he was Senate.
Now he's a full judge.
Now he's a full-fledged U.S. judge. Yeah.
So this guy was nominated by President Trump. Am I right?
Yes, just recently,
okay.
confirmed by the Senate.
That. All right. Okay. All right. So anything else you wanted to tell about this story?
Well, if you go down, what Frank talks about is the fact that if there's anything there, okay. There's anything there that about impersonation, that's pecuniary gain or any type of benefit whatsoever, Chiappetta is gone. Not just from the legal profession, not just from the case, but he potentially is facing criminal charges here. And
if
that's
they
the
can
problem.
show that someone sent an email or series of emails to this particular PTESQ1 at yahoo.com and thought they were talking to Traynor, and the person responding presented themselves as Traynor. So if they can find someone, if that person exists, and again, if it was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. But if they find someone who sent an email to this email address thinking they were sending to that and got responses and thought they were speaking to them, then Chiappetta may be going to jail.
That's potentially a federal aggravated identity theft and a 2-year mandatory minimum. You know,
very big deal. Very big deal. All right, that is the end of the What the Hell segment. Now, last week we talked about a lady who I don't talk about that often. I think after this particular segment, we may be done talking to her. But our friend Julie Holborn, she advanced our reporting. A woman named Francesca Amato Banfield, maybe Banfield Amato, whatever it is. Francesca, she runs Punish for Protecting. Sometimes it's a nonprofit, sometimes it's something else. It's very unclear what it is. She hoodwinked possibly dozens, maybe hundreds of parents, a lot of whom will say probably couldn't afford a trip to DC, with the idea that that a bill was going to pass, that congressional hearings were going to be held. That's not what happened. She wrote a bill. Since she's not been elected to anything, we'll call it a draft. It's called what? The Family Justice and Accountability Act. She even named it. That's ridiculous. Once it gets into Congress, they'll name it whatever they feel like naming it, if it ever got into Congress. She held a meeting, a conference in the Cleveland Public Library near the Capitol, but not in the Capitol. And parents spoke. They did not testify because testimony is under oath. So you and I both challenged her on that. You know what Francesca did?
Tell everybody, Michael.
She started presenting, suggesting that the bills were being sponsored by two members of Congress, Senator Chuck Grassley, I think the oldest living legislator from Iowa. I think he's pushing 90, and he's pretty sharp. And Barry Moore, I don't know him. He's a representative from the state of Alabama. And Julie reached out to both offices, and both offices said, we did not sponsor a bill. Moore went further and said, look, I'm friendly with a woman. Oh my God, I'm going to forget her name. I'm sorry. And I know the woman he's referring to. I'm friendly with this woman. And what the hell was her name? Oh yeah, here we go. Terry LaPointe. So he's friendly with Terry. Terry is running for Congress in Alabama in a different district. She asked me to reserve a congressional room. This woman, Francesca, called multiple times. I gave her a room. That's all I did. I'm not involved with this law. I'm involved with another law, HR 5647, the Advocates for Family Act. That's a real law. So they both called out Francesca. This is pretty serious what Francesca did. Number one, she hoodwinked people. If you can afford the trip, I don't think it's that big a deal. Going to DC is good. Family court conferences are okay. But if you were down to your last $800-900 and you spent $400 to $500 on a trip to DC because you thought a bill was about to be introduced and you were going to be a part of congressional hearings, that's a problem. The second part may be a really big problem too. I don't know if either or both of these guys are gossips. Are they now going through the rest of Congress and telling them about the crazy lady, Francesca? And then is that going to poison the well on family court reform because somebody else is going to call and start telling them about, we'd like you to help us reform family court, and they're going to remember Francesca? Maybe, or maybe they forgot about it 5 minutes after the conversation was over. I don't know. I'm not inside their head. It's not helpful. I don't think any member of Congress wants to be used as propaganda. So they didn't appreciate it. And you poison the well with the people who are in a position to help you and to advance your own interests. And to no one's surprise, shortly after Julie's article came out, because I was quoted in it, Francesca also sent both of us, Julie and me, a cease and desist letter. She has sent now 3 of them. I told her these letters are boring, Francesca. If you want to go and sue someone, I would just sue. But she keeps sending out cease and desist letters, and I think there it is. I'm with a room full of professionals who are laughing so hard. So thank you now, because I can sue you all. The one thing I'll point out about this cease and desist letter, I think right here, this is an important part. Date, insert date. This looks like she got a template. Okay, you got to put in the date, Francesca. But a proper cease and desist letter is not where you're coy, where you make vague allegations, because for the most part, the reason that cease and desist letters exist is to avoid litigation, is to say, here's what you did wrong, here's how you know that it's wrong, and here's what steps you need to take to avoid litigation. She just keeps saying defamation, libel. She doesn't say what's defamatory. She doesn't say what needs to be fixed. She basically says the whole thing is false. You better remove it or I'll sue. And she says it'll wind up in court. You don't want this to wind up in court, Francesca, because the judge will say, well, you didn't tell her what she did wrong. So how is she supposed to fix it? Is the whole article wrong? How is the whole article wrong? You didn't tell her that. So it's not a really proper cease and desist letter. It does use a lot of big words, a lot of legal words. So maybe it's proper in that way. But It's not proper in the sense that you have identified the things that are defamatory, because of course there's nothing defamatory. She reached out to, she's not making up quotes. She reached out to Grassley's office and Moore's office. Your thoughts?
Well, look, she's digging herself a hole, Mike. You know, and the first thing about, you know, if you want to, you know, try to fix this, is to stop digging. And I think she's got to kind of admit, or come to, you know, with some good faith, and say, what's going on here? But all she does is she started to attack us, and she said it was all men attacking a woman. That's the first card she played. She played the woman card, and now Julie, I guess she's going to play. Julie had a sex change. I don't know. It's like,
what about the other issue? Number one, what about if you're conning 100 people without that much money in the bank to come to DC because they think that they're going to be a part of a congressional hearing when they're not? How big a problem is that?
Well, I said this before in my reporting when I pulled the 990, right? And from 2019 and 2020, you know, she had filed from 2020. She lost her tax exempt status. But in 2019, she made about $25,000 worth of receipts for the company. That was about the contributions that she received, and she paid herself $20,000 out of it. Yeah, right. Okay. So that raises a real question of, you know, ethical question about a charitable ethical question. What's she in this for? Is she in this for the charitable, or is she in this to find a hustle? Is this a hustle? And it looks more and more like a hustle than it does a genuine, bona fide charitable event.
If you've raised $25,000, you really should just take zero because you haven't raised enough. But generally, as I said, 10 to 25% of all donations.
I would have been fine with her taking $5,000 there. She's got to cover costs, so maybe she takes a fee of $5, or you cover your expenses. I can understand expenses are very, very big. Cover the trip to DC, cover to this, cover that. If you're covering your expenses, then that's totally, you know, allowable. But when you're having an organization that you're representing is doing X, Y, and Z, and you're doing it in order to enrich yourself, that goes against the basic fundamental expectations that people have. Is why do you have a nonprofit?
Right, and Dave Weigel point, it's okay to enrich yourself, but there is an ethical amount that you can take. You know, if your organization raised $30 million and you take a salary of $300,000, that's okay. But you know, she only raised $25,000. That's really the problem. Is that 80%?
And I did threshold.
Right. I did a story. I did a series of stories on a nonprofit called One with the Ocean, and it was the same thing. He was raising like 120,000, taking 96,000 for himself. The numbers were bigger, but that's not how it works. All right, next, I did an article out of Orange County, and this is another example of the complete lack of due process in family court. So first of all, this lady, Mary Kreber Verapapa, is what I call a Nepo judge, because as you can see, she filled the vacancy created by the retirement of Judge Ronald B. Kreber, and then later they say she is the daughter of retired Judge Ronald B. Kreber. So they gave her the seat once occupied by her dad. She's a Nepo judge. So Carlton and his ex-wife, Melissa, had a custody arrangement in 2023, only had 20% of the custody time. His dad, Carl, they're not junior and senior, the dad told me, he said that the kids started complaining they didn't see their dad enough. Carlton asked Melissa if they could increase the amount of time. Melissa, rather than increasing it, they call it something different than a modification of custody, but basically filed for a modification of custody. That led to the appointment of this lady to do a custody evaluation. Then in March 17th of 2025, they hold an emergency hearing based on this custody evaluation done by Dr. Tompkins. Would you like to find out what was in this custody evaluation that caused such an emergency?
I don't know, Michael. What is in there? You tell me.
I wish I knew, except they sealed the custody evaluation itself. So I don't know what's in the custody evaluation. What I do know, they call it a hearing. I guess you could say there was a hearing, but Melissa's attorneys spoke for a while. Oh, by the way, they closed the hearing. See, it says closed hearing. Melissa's attorneys spoke for a while. Carlton spoke for a little while. Carlton asked for the hearing to be continued. Judge Vera Papa did grant him the continuance, but in the meantime, she ordered, here we go, respondent indicates he's unable to review the entire report, so he really couldn't review it. She continued the hearing, but in the meantime, she changed custody to sole custody. There it is. Petitioner mother shall have temporary sole legal, sole physical custody. Why? There is an emergency at this time as indicated in the party's 7:30 evaluation. That's not how emergencies work. This is a blatant violation of his due process. An emergency is if he was throwing scalding hot water at them, if he drove drunk with them, if he stopped feeding them meaning the kids, not someone's interpretation, not someone's report. This lady conjured up an emergency from the clear blue sky, and she changed custody at a time when he didn't have an attorney. And this blatantly violates his due process. And this is not the only case for this judge, the Nepo judge, Judge Mary Krieber Vera Papa, a horrible violation of his rights. Mob. What's the deal here? All right, so go ahead. Your thoughts on it.
Well, this is what we got when we have no transparency in the courts, Michael. We talk about this all the time. And, we talk about this every week. If we had a full record and we knew what was going on, we could be able to come to some type of...
The hearing was closed, so there's no transcript of the hearing. The 7:30, that's the code for California for custody evaluation, is sealed. So we don't know. Oh, and there's one other part. The other attorney, Michael Monarch, and the Monarch family is pretty big in Orange County, made allusion to this lady, Dr. Tompkins, writing a letter to the court. And the letter has not been produced. We don't know what's in the letter. The judge claims I haven't looked at the letter. We don't know if the judge looked at the letter. You're right. This is a complete lack of transparency. That is a huge problem. She does bad, and then she covers it up by sealing everything. The Nepo judge, that is.
And that's Monarch. That's David Monarch and all these other people. That the father was...
David is the brother. Michael
Yeah,
Monarch,
the father was the top judge. It's Michael Monarch.
Right.
Julie was talking about with some of her cases that the cases get funneled to Monarch. The Monarchs. Right. They're a little factory out there. That's the problem. When you have these people, especially in a situation like that, Mike, where we know there's nepotism going on. You're the children of the top judge and the little cottage practice in one of the biggest counties in the country. You would want a little bit of vigilance. You would want sunlight.
Right.
You would want a little transparency.
That he felt like they had some sort of in with the judge, because even though the situation wasn't changed, and that to modify custody, there has to be what's called a change in circumstance. You have an order. Once that order is finalized, that should be it. Because if the order can be changed willy-nilly, then that's anarchy. So you have to have a legitimate change in circumstance. They didn't really have a change in circumstance. There was no reason to bring in a custody evaluator. A custody evaluator should be done. I don't think it should ever be done, but properly it's done before the initial order, because that's when all of those things are determined. Those things have already been determined. This lady, Vera Papa, wanted to, in effect, open up the custody, which she did, and then change custody on an emergency basis based on an evaluation. And this guy was filing things, just like what we saw with the Hales case, that shouldn't get past the judge, should not get to a hearing, and was allowed to get to a hearing. And it does suggest that you've got an especially friendly, a biased relationship between Monarch and the judge in this case.
Yeah. So I think we
All
need
right.
to
And
get
we've
this done.
our last story also from the Frank report, but you've been covering this as well. Uh, he's been covering a criminal case. A German guy gets sentenced for a bunch of
Yeah.
money, but he's in Germany and he's giving the U.S. the middle finger. So we should definitely not like this guy, right? He's the bad guy, or is he not the bad guy?
No, actually, Bernhard Fritsch is a German genius, and he is someone who was basically railroaded, a tech entrepreneur, would have revolutionized the way that influencers monetize. And he's been around for a long time. He actually was with Pope John Paul II, and he was helped John Paul II do his music. He's a musician, and he basically invented iTunes before iTunes. Before Apple had iTunes, he had it first. He's this brilliant guy, and there was the claim that he was the bad guy in all of this, that he was somehow doing some type of manipulation, fraud, everything else. And the case stemmed from 2017, and it's going on for years. So he's a white collar, prosecution. Now he's from Germany. He's living in LA, and there's no such thing as criminal fraud for securities and white collar stuff in Germany. It's just not part of the law. Everything there is a civil penalty. Okay. And so the first part is that, he went there and the case was a terrible case and he was railroaded left, right, and center. And so he's on his leave from the court and he gets found guilty. He goes down to Mexico, hops a flight back to Dusseldorf, and he's sitting in Bavaria, eating Bavarian creams. He got met by the German police. And they said to him, the German police said to him,
hold on. We have an extradition agreement, I'm sure, with Germany. How come Germans aren't sending him back?
When he got off the plane, he had the FSB beat him there, and they basically said, Mr. Fritsch, good to see you. We want you to sign these papers that you will not fight extradition because the law that you were purportedly convicted of in the United States is against the public policy of Germany. It's that we never criminalize these type of activity. It would be a civil penalty at best. So the German government is going to bat for him, as they do for everybody that is potentially hit with U.S. Security.
It's a non-violent financial crime, which Germans don't consider a crime.
Yes. So he's back in Germany. He's doing what he's got to do. Now he's in the second phase. If you go back to the next article that we just started with, we're going to unravel what's happening here. We're unraveling all the things that were happening. If you go down right there, the perfect victim. This guy right here, Danny Guy. That's his name, Danny Guy. And Danny Guy is the person is the bad actor here, it looks like, because he met the AUSA Escalante and the FBI Special Agent Austin, and he sold them a bill of goods, it looks like. He said, oh, this guy defrauded me. He did this, he did that. You have to go after him, right? He's his venture capitalist, but he didn't actually lose anything. He didn't lose anything. And Bernhard Fritsch didn't defraud anybody of anything.
This is kind of similar to that other story that Frank covered with the group that was doing the sex stuff. Well,
one taste, yes,
right, one taste.
It
doesn't look like there's actually a victim there, but they still conjure up a crime.
They're in prison. The one taste girls, they're in prison, and they're going to be there for a long time. They threw the book at them. And this guy was smart enough to get out of there. And so this guy's a bad news, this Danny Guy. He's a bad news, some people will call him a con artist, hedge fund type. He doesn't make money for people. He built people out of money. He loses money for people, but he ends up on top every time. And so he went to these people.
He explained to me, this guy Fritsch was looking for investors. Guy is one of the investors. He put money in. Why? And he lost money. How come that's not a crime?
Well, this guy, Danny Guy, sold the story to Karen Escalante and FBI agent Austin over drinks and dinner that Fritsch tricked him, right? He tricked him to the tune of $7 million. He tricked him out of doing X, Y, and Z. But he doesn't disclose his background. And this guy, Danny Guy, has lost over 500 million of investors' money. Okay. This guy, that's Fritz right there. He's signing deals, you know, in the Middle East. He's signing deals with people in Hollywood. He knows what he's doing, but this guy was basically a sour grapes type competitor almost. I think that he was trying to just take this guy down for some ulterior motive for the hedge fund. And it's like corporate war, but this guy sold, the con artist guy sold the feds hook, line, and sinker on the con. Okay, saying that Fritz was the bad guy. Meanwhile, Fritz wasn't the bad guy. They just wanted him out of the way, it looks like. And what better way to get the federal government, get a prosecutor that's an ambitious prosecutor. And this young woman, Escalante, is no longer at the Department of Justice. She's in private practice now, probably making $1 million a year plus as a partner or a counsel to a large firm in Los Angeles. And all they care about is getting somebody in, throwing a case at them, and then either pleading them out or getting their conviction. And they don't look to see whether or not there's actually any meat on the bones here. They didn't vet Danny Guy's story.
Frank found out that this guy was part of the Uranium One deal?
Oh, yeah. This guy is part of Uranium One. He's got all this.
Uranium One was this mineral deal we did with Russia that Hillary Clinton, she approved it, or did she have a stake in it?
Yeah, she was part of it. She's part of that.
Okay.
Forever.
All right. Anything else you wanted to add?
If you go down, if you look at where the bottom part where you have Escalante and Austin, they're the ones that are the bigger issues, because look at this. You have Gregory Austin and Karen Escalante. Because of this case, which was spurious to begin with, that they got sold a bill of goods from Danny Guy, they're motivated to keep this case going. They can't derail the case, even if the truth came out, because it would derail their careers. Right? Because of this case, Austin got a promotion. Escalante is now in private practice at the Adams, the law firm out there in Los Angeles. So that's the problem. So this is the first piece of the story. Frank's going to continue reporting, and we're going to continue to talk about it. But it shows that we have real deep-seated problems with our Department of Justice.
All right. And that is it for this week. Hopefully next week I can get this back up on YouTube. But in the meantime, definitely on Rumble, and we will talk soon.